Imagine boarding a first-class cabin that gleams with luxury leather seats, ambient lighting, and the promise of an uneventful flight. Now imagine being 14, alone, and utterly unprepared for the silent storm that erupts when privilege confronts poise. Meet Maya Brooks, NovaAir co-founder's daughter, who steps into seat 1A only to be told, "Excuse me, that's not your place." Why is a seasoned patron willing to weaponize entitlement against a child? What happens when power is challenged at 30,000 feet? How far will an airline staff go to protect their most loyal customer? And how quietly can injustice unfold when no one dares to speak? This isn't just about a seat. It's about who gets to belong and what it takes to reclaim dignity in the face of orchestrated erasure. Get ready to witness a delicate dance of decorum and defiance, where one quiet reveal topples an entire hierarchy. If you've ever wondered what true courage looks like when the world expects you to be small, you won't want to miss what happens next. Like, share, and subscribe now, because this story will challenge everything you think you know. The terminal thrummed with energy, rolling suitcases clattering against polished floors, boarding calls echoing through the cavernous hall like distant thunder, and a murmur of anxious travelers weaving between concession stands. Maya Brooks adjusted the strap of her charcoal backpack, pausing at the threshold of Gate 45 to inhale deeply. She was 14, but there was a steeliness in her eyes that made her appear older. Today, she carried not only her carry-on, but the weight of expectation her father had drilled into her posture since toddlerhood. Stand tall. Speak softly. Never yield. Ahead, the glossy letters of NovaAir spelled promise across the jet bridge. A flight attendant with a perfectly pressed uniform lipstick matched to her name badge scanned Maya's pass with a polite nod. "Welcome aboard, Miss Brooks. First class, seat 1A, straight ahead." The woman's smile faltered for a fraction of a heartbeat at the sight of a young black girl occupying a seat normally reserved for seasoned travelers. Maya acknowledged the greeting with quiet confidence. She slipped past, stepping into the hushed sanctum of the first-class cabin. Lavish leather seats lined both sides of the aisle, bathed in soft LED lighting that shifted from cool white to warm amber. The faint aroma of polished wood and premium amenity kits drifted in the air, alongside the distant hum of engines warming for takeoff. At the front, her seat 1A beckoned like a throne plush, wide and unobstructed, with a gleaming galley window beside it. Maya settled in, carefully stowing her bag overhead. She smoothed the navy blazer of her custom school uniform, a design she and her father had perfected together, then settled her posture to mirror the poise she felt deep within. As she reached for the safety card, a voice as crisp as pressed linen cut the silence. "Excuse me." The words were delivered without question, pitched instead in accusation. Maya looked up to find a tall woman standing before her, platinum hair pulled into a severe chignon, her designer coat wrapped tight around shoulders that had grown used to command. Vivian Davenport surveyed Maya with narrowed eyes, eyes that carried the arrogance of inherited privilege. "That has to be a mistake," Vivian declared, her voice deliberately loud so that nearby passengers turned their heads. "Seat 1A is mine, always has been." Maya met her gaze calmly. "My boarding pass says otherwise," she replied, producing the glittering gold-trimmed ticket. The woman leaned in, eyebrows arching. "Perhaps it's an upgrade. You know how these airlines mix things up." Vivian's tone was a challenge, dripped in condescension. Before Maya could speak again, Claire Foster, the lead flight attendant, glided forward, tablet in hand. Her heels tapped against the carpet in a steady rhythm as she crouched beside Vivian. "Is there a problem here, Mrs. Davenport?" Vivian didn't hesitate. "Yes, there's a child in my seat. Claire's professional mask slipped for just a moment as she confirmed the manifest on her screen. Then she tilted her head, glancing at Maya's pass. Actually, Mrs. Davenport, seat 1A is assigned to Miss Brooks today. The disdain in Vivian's lips sharpened. Not yet, she murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Maya felt a familiar knot coil in her stomach, an echo of every time someone presumed she didn't belong. She returned her attention to the safety card, sliding it back into the pocket without a word. Claire offered Vivian seat 2A still first class, one row back, with every amenity intact, with exaggerated grace. Vivian relented, floating toward 2A like a queen bestowing mercy. As she passed, Vivian leaned close enough for only Maya to hear, "Enjoy it while it lasts." Sweetheart, not everyone can pretend to belong. Maya exhaled slowly, her chest tightening. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she retrieved a hardcover novel, her father's gift this morning, and opened it as though the world beyond its pages held all the answers. Around them, tension rippled. Passengers exchanged furtive glances, but remained silent. No one offered Maya a word of support. No one stood. Moments later, the captain's voice warmed over the PA welcome aboard Flight 709 service to San Francisco. Please fasten your seat belts as we prepare for departure. Maya folded her hands, steeling herself for whatever came next. From her vantage point, she watched Claire exchange a conspiratorial nod with an attendant in the galley. Their eyes flickered with uncertainty, evidence that the unspoken rules of privilege were cracking. Claire returned, tablet in hand, and crouched beside Maya again. "May I see your boarding pass once more?" Maya obliged, watching Claire's fingers hover over the barcode without scanning an oversight too deliberate to be accidental. Leaning toward Vivian, Claire raised her voice. "We're still confirming, but it appears there may have been an assignment error." Vivian's triumphant smirk spread across her face. "Children these days," she proclaimed. "Money doesn't buy culture." The cabin air thickened with complicity. Maya inhaled, recalling her father's mantra, "Dignity is defiance." She sat tall, every inch the picture of calm, even as her heart pounded. Overhead compartments clicked closed. Engines rumbled. Claire retreated to the galley, her posture measured. Vivian reclined in 2A with the smug assurance of victory, but Maya's presence remained an unspoken challenge, a question hanging between them that no one dared answer. From her pocket, Maya fingered a small card, a last resort identification her father had insisted she carry. She hadn't used it yet, determined to rely on her own quiet power first. But with every passing second, she recognized that titles and privileges could shift like air currents. The moment before takeoff held a fragile tension, the clash between entitlement and earned belonging, between silence and self-possession. Maya closed her book and gazed forward, prepared for whatever would unfold at 30,000 feet. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft glow as Flight A23 began its taxi toward the runway. The hum of engines rose, but a tighter tension had already settled in first class. Maya Brooks closed her novel, folding her hands neatly in her lap. She faced forward, every nerve alert, knowing that this journey would test more than her patience, it would test her resolve. Moments later, Claire Foster returned to the front of the cabin, her tablet still clutched in one hand. Her shoulders weren't as relaxed as before, her posture more theatrical, as though she were stepping into a role she'd memorized. She paused, glancing first at Maya Brooks, then at Vivian Davenport, whose arms remained crossed and whose expression radiated indignant superiority. Quietly, so that nearby passengers could overhear just enough. Claire leaned toward Vivian. "Mrs. Davenport, would you mind stepping into the galley with me? I'd like to review something with you." With a barely perceptible roll of her eyes, Vivian rose and swept past the velvet curtain that partitioned the galley. She moved with practiced elegance, her chin tilted high. This indignity, she conveyed without words, was beneath her, left alone. Maya watched the curtain fall back, her heartbeat steady. These silent battles were familiar territory, battles waged with nothing but restraint and quiet strength. Through the semi-opaque divider, voices drifted. Claire's tone was soft, almost contrite. "I understand, Mrs. Davenport. You've flown with NovaAir for over a decade. Seat 1A has always been yours." Vivian's response came sharp. "It's not just a preference. It's built into my DNA. And yet, today, I'm supposed to sit behind that child." Claire inclined her head, eyes flicking toward the cabin entrance to ensure no one else was listening. "We're checking with gate records," she said. "There may have been a system override. We'll make it right." When Claire emerged, her face wore the softened mask of professional concern. She paused beside Maya and offered a gentle smile. "Sweetheart, may I see your boarding pass again?" Maya extended it without hesitation. She met Claire's eyes coolly as Claire's fingers hovered over the barcode, uncertain, deliberate, but never scanning. Instead, Claire glanced at Vivian and, loud enough for neighboring seats, whispered, "We're still confirming. It appears the assignment might be incorrect." Vivian's lips curved into a smug grin. She leaned slightly into the aisle. "Well," she said, voice raised, "children today think money equals culture. First class isn't just about paying your fare, it's knowing how to belong." A ripple of discomfort spread through the cabin. A man in a tailored suit cleared his throat and turned away. A woman next to him offered a tight smile before burying her face in a magazine. No one spoke. Silence, heavy and complicit, filled the space. Maya inhaled through her nose poise and defiance, her father's lessons echoing in every breath. She did not answer. Claire returned Maya's pass with a curt nod. "We're working on it, Miss Brooks." Then she retreated behind the curtain once more. Vivian wasn't finished. She withdrew a folded silk handkerchief from her designer handbag and pressed it to her temples with exaggerated flair. Leaning toward the couple across the aisle, she whispered loud enough for them to hear clear as day. "Can you imagine 14 and already believing you can buy dignity?" The woman offered a nervous laugh. Her companion simply nodded, eyes glued to the looping safety video above. No one challenged Vivian. No one reminded her bullying a minor remains bullying, no matter how many miles you've flown. From her seat, Maya cataloged every detail, the tone, the alliances forming, the swift currents of allegiance that favor entitlement over empathy. She'd watched her father navigate corporate boardrooms where smiles concealed conspiracy. She recognized the pattern, identify allies, isolate doubt, act swiftly before truth can catch up. After a tense pause, Claire reappeared with new certainty. "We've contacted the ground team," she announced. "They're reviewing the upgrade records. In the meantime, to avoid any delay, we can offer you an alternate seat." Vivian's lipstick smile snapped back into place. "Finally," she purred. Claire turned back to Maya. "Miss Brooks, we have seat 4C in first class still available, a window seat with extra legroom. Would you mind moving there until we resolve this?" The offer hung in the air. Syrupy sweet, yet edged with steel. Maya studied her boarding pass as though seeing it for the first time. Then leveled her gaze on Claire Foster. "I'd prefer to stay," she said, her voice quiet but unwavering. "My ticket says I am assigned to 1A. I believe everything can be sorted without me moving." Claire's polite smile froze for a heartbeat. Across the aisle, Vivian rolled her eyes and muttered, "Entitled and stubborn, a perfect combination." But even they caught the faint tremor in that declaration. A subtle shift passed through the cabin, nearly imperceptible, but real, a current of resistance stirring like shifting air before a storm. Claire's grip on her tablet tightened. She reached for her radio and muttered something inaudible. Maya remained still, folding her hands and drawing in a steady breath. She didn't need an advocate. She had her presence. Engines roared as Flight A23 prepared to depart. The cabin lights dimmed further, reflections dancing across polished armrests. Claire re-emerged, no gift bag this time, no offer of consolation, just a determined stride toward Vivian's seat. "Might I get you anything else? Mrs. Davenport," she asked, voice perfectly neutral. Vivian paused, glass raised, then waved her hand dismissively. "No, thank you. You've resolved everything." Claire nodded once and turned away, her eyes briefly flicking toward Maya's empty cup still unnoticed behind the curtains. In the rear, the younger flight attendant navigated the service cart with careful precision, passing Maya's row without so much as a glance. Maya pressed the call button above her head. The chime echoed unanswered. 2 minutes passed, then 5. The cart rattled by again, eyes fixed ahead. Vivian watched with thinly concealed satisfaction. Strange how service standards have changed. She remarked to no one in particular. Used to be every guest here got attention. Maya's hand hovered mid-reach above the button before she let it drop. This was the true test enduring the erasure without relinquishing her dignity. She sat tall, her gaze locked on her lap, her breathing steady. Around her, the cabin settled into a tense hush, an uneasy calm rather than peaceful quiet. Claire slipped behind the curtain once more. A soft hum signaled she was radioing the cockpit. Vivian reclined, crossing her legs with an air of triumph as the cabin doors sealed shut. In that pregnant moment before takeoff, Maya reflected on her father's words. Some people will try to shrink you to fit their comfort. Don't. She inhaled, sat taller, and prepared to face whatever pressures the flight attendants and privileged passenger might level against her. The engines roared louder, a physical reminder of the altitude they would soon reach. But for Maya, the true ascent occurred in this first-class cabin, where every whispered slight and calculated snub had only sharpened her resolve. As the wheels lifted and the cabin lifted with them, Maya Brooks remained an unshakable presence, silent, composed, and utterly aware that belonging is claimed by quiet conviction, not by pedigree or prejudice. The cabin lights settled into a muted glow as Flight A23 rumbled forward. Maya Brooks tightened her seatbelt and bowed her head momentarily, tracing the familiar contour of her lap. She turned her gaze to the window, watching the tarmac lights blur into streaks. The last barrier between her and the skies above was the closing door, and beyond it, a powder keg of entitlement still lingered. A soft voice came from behind the curtain. Claire Foster reappeared, her stride measured, her posture far less cordial than before. She offered Vivian Davenport a curt nod, an intimate gesture, heavy with unspoken collusion. Maya did not flinch. Her grip on the armrest remained steady as the engine's growl deepened. Vivian leaned back in her seat, legs crossed in triumph. "Let's hope the little princess doesn't cause turbulence for the rest of us," she whispered, her words cloaked in a sugary threat that hovered in the air like an unlit fuse. The plane's engines roared to life. As the cabin lights shifted to a warm dusk, Claire Foster approached Seat 1A, carrying a pristine white gift bag stamped with the NovaAir emblem. Her heels tapped against the aisle carpet in a rehearsed rhythm. She knelt beside Maya, voice lowered to a sugary purr. "Miss Brooks, I understand independence is important to a traveler your age. You've handled everything with remarkable maturity." She presented the gift bag like a prize. "To make things more comfortable, we have prepared this for you, a seat in row 6 with a window view, extra legroom, and this bag as a token of our appreciation." Claire lifted the bag just enough for its silver ribbon to catch the light. Maya regarded it with cool detachment, her dark eyes holding the attendant's gaze. "If I accept," Maya asked crisply, "will my boarding record update to reflect a new seat assignment?" Claire's practiced calm flickered. "Officially, no," she admitted. "But Mrs. Davenport has a long-standing history with Seat 1A over 10 years of international flights. We keep our regulars comfortable." Maya folded her hands. "My ticket is clear. I'm assigned to 1A, and I intend to remain here." Claire's smile froze. She set the gift bag gently on the armrest, leaning in so close Maya could feel her breath. "Listen, sweetheart," Claire whispered, voice cold as steel. "There are passengers, and then there are those who keep this airline running. Influence matters. You're young. You might not see everything yet. It's best to keep key figures satisfied, especially those who fly more often than some of our pilots." Maya held Claire's gaze evenly. "Am I breaking any rules by sitting here?" she asked softly. Claire blinked, momentarily unbalanced. "Of course not," she stammered, then recovered with a nod. "But it's your choice." With that, Claire rose, adjusted her name tag, and swept back into the galley. Vivian seized the moment, leaning forward in 2A. Courtesy isn't inherited, she proclaimed to no one in particular, her tone dripping with feigned concern. "It's earned." She reclined, crossing her arms like royalty forced to share her throne with a pauper. Maya tucked her head back against the seat, steady breaths anchoring her resolve. She didn't respond. Her posture alone spoke volumes. Claire slipped behind the curtain again, only to return moments later without the gift bag or any pretense of warmth. She knelt beside Maya, face inches from her ear. "Little girl," she hissed, "don't make this harder than it has to be. People on this plane have influence. Some can make things very uncomfortable for you. It's not a threat. It's reality." Maya's heart thudded, but her voice remained even. "Is that official airline policy?" Claire rose slowly and stepped away, silence sealing her answer. She left behind a tangible chill. Vivian chuckled, tapping her champagne flute. "When children mistake themselves for adults," she mused, ensuring the cabin heard, "they learn quickly. Money can buy a seat, but it can't teach manners." The safety demonstration had yet to play, the screen before Maya dark. She recalled her father's lesson from years ago on a quiet city square. Some will try to shrink you to fit their comfort. Don't. She inhaled, drew herself taller against the memory, anchoring her dignity to the seat they sought to deny her. Around her, whispers died down into a tense hush. In neighboring rows, passengers shifted uneasily. The belt sign chimed. Engines roared as the plane inched toward the runway. Maya remained statuesque, every glare and silent nod exchanged between crew and privileged passenger reinforcing her solitude. Yet she felt a subtle shift in the cabin's atmosphere, as if every hushed conversation and sideways glance acknowledged her quiet defiance. Beyond the curtain, Claire's footsteps echoed. Maya watched Vivian unbuckle and stand, moving into the aisle with the easy grace of someone accustomed to command. She slipped into the empty seat beside Maya, an uninvited invasion of boundary and space, but did not speak. Vivian's presence filled the aisle with the scent of designer perfume and bitter intent. After a pause, she addressed the cabin. "This seat isn't just a chair. It's a symbol of legacy, of earned respect, of the effort it takes to belong. Her words struck the polished panels around them like splinters, decorous, yet cutting. Maya's gaze remained fixed on the window, her reflection calm and resolute. Vivian continued, her voice smooth as silk. Some earn their place, others she turned toward Maya. Think it simply handed to them. Silence stretched taut. Then, as the final engine roar signaled impending liftoff, Maya Brooks shifted in her seat, meeting Vivian's eyes with unflinching calm. No words were needed. In that look, she reclaimed her seat, her dignity, and the truth that belonging is not purchased, it is asserted with quiet strength. For a heartbeat longer, the first-class cabin held its breath. Then the wheels lifted, and the cabin settled into flight, its hierarchy unspoken, its balance unsettled by the girl in seat 1A who refused to move. The cabin settled into a low, almost reverent hush as Flight A23 leveled off. Maya Brooks pressed her head gently against the seat back, listening to the distant rumble of engines and the hush of settled rows. Behind her, a familiar rustle of silk announced Vivian Davenport's return. Her scent, a heady blend of rose and something sharper, enveloped the first-class cabin like an invisible barricade. Vivian eased into the empty seat beside Maya, as though reclaiming territory. She folded her hands over a designer clutch, angling her body just so never fully facing Maya, yet close enough that her words would land on every ear in the row. "You know," Vivian began, voice pitched light and conversational, "this seat carries more than comfort. It's a symbol of legacy, of all the sweat and sacrifice it took to earn a place here." She paused, letting the weight of "earn" hang in the air. It's not something simply handed over because someone's father has deep pockets. Maya held her gaze on the screen in front of her, its blank face mirroring Vivian's cold composure. The implication cut deeper than any raised voice. Around them, the other passengers shifted. A woman in a red scarf glanced uneasily toward Maya, then looked away. Vivian continued, her tone dropping to a private murmur, yet pitched for all to hear. "Some of us have spent decades building careers, relationships, reputations, earning every inch of this cabin. And then there are those who think a ticket purchase equals pedigree." A hush rippled through the cabin as a young flight attendant wheeled a cart of drinks past Maya, offering crystal glasses of sparkling water and juice everywhere, except her row. He moved on, leaving Maya's empty cup untouched. The attendant returned, but his focus remained elsewhere, unseen. Maya lifted a slender finger and pressed her call button. A soft chime rang, then silence. 2 minutes passed, then 5, before the attendant's cart rattled by again without so much as a glance. From 2A, Vivian took a deliberate sip of her Perrier with lime. "Funny, isn't it?" she mused aloud, voice silky. "There was a time when every guest here got attention. Now, not so much." Maya's hand paused mid-reach. She remembered her father's lesson. Silence is not surrender. Poise is not weakness. She sat taller, shoulders squared, eyes calm. Vivian leaned closer, tapping a manicured nail against the armrest. "Silence can be graceful," she whispered, "but it leaves room for assumptions." "Do you know why I care so much about this seat? Because when traditions get shaken even slightly, the ripples can be inconvenient." She straightened and swept back to her own seat, leaving behind a cloud of perfume and veiled malice. The cart rolled on. Maya remained still, the weight of every unspoken slight carving itself into her resolve. Above, the cabin lights glowed softly as the plane climbed. Maya closed her eyes briefly, inhaling, anchoring herself in dignity. Every slight, the ignored button, the missing water, The whispered threats only sharpened her determination. Beyond the curtain, Claire Foster exchanged hushed words with the crew. Maya sensed the shift the once carefree air had thickened into complicity. Yet in her seat remained a quiet rebellion, a testament to the power of presence when the world tries to erase you. Maya Brooks sat in the last first-class seat, her back perfectly straight, hands folded gently in her lap. Through the half-open galley curtain, she watched Claire Foster's retreating silhouette, then turned her gaze to the small oval window beside her. The world outside was a blur of concrete and runway lights, but the real turbulence had nothing to do with the weather. It was the undercurrent of privilege and prejudice that had chased her from 1A. Moments ago, Claire had slipped in holding a crisp white envelope embossed with silver foil Vivian Davenport's secret weapon. At Vivian's discreet wave, Claire had radioed for reinforcements. Now, Rachel Bennett, the flight supervisor, appeared at the forward cabin doorway like an emissary summoned to a courtly drama. Her uniform was immaculate, her demeanor composed yet laden with the unspoken charge of protecting the airline's image. Rachel approached Vivian with a practiced smile that masked the calculations dancing behind her eyes. "Mrs. Davenport," she said, voice warm but strained. "What can I do for you today?" Vivian placed the envelope on her own tray table with regal precision. "Over 12 years," she began softly, letting her words carry. "I've flown NovaAir in seat 1A on countless occasions. That seat is woven into my identity with this airline." And today, she sighed in mock woundedness, it's been handed to a child. Her eyes flicked briefly toward Maya, who stared forward, silent but watchful. Rachel's lips curved in a diplomatic nod. "I understand. Mrs. Davenport, we're reviewing gate logs now. There may have been an automated upgrade glitch." Vivian leaned closer, her voice dropping to velvet. "You and I both know there are unspoken courtesies for VIP clients. I've lunched with Director Morgan, assisted with last quarter's charity gala. I'm not seeking a spectacle, I merely request recognition." The invocation of Director Morgan, NovaAir's elite liaison, landed like a quiet bomb. Rachel's expression shifted subtly. She absorbed the threat beneath Vivian's polished words. Then she turned toward Maya. "Miss Brooks, would you mind stepping to the rear cabin with Claire for a brief verification of your boarding details? Just routine checks." Maya's posture didn't waver. "Am I being asked to leave my seat?" she asked softly, eyes steady. "To confirm priority assignments," Rachel replied evenly. "It's temporary." Vivian's smile tightened in the background. "Discretion is always appreciated, especially in delicate matters," she murmured. Maya considered the phrasing temporary. Verification, and recognized the gambit, displace her quietly before the truth surfaced. She stood calmly, glancing once at her boarding pass before tucking it into her blazer pocket. Then, without haste or defiance, she followed Claire through the curtain. Across the first-class cabin, Vivian reclined again, voice carrying. "It's best when such things are handled discreetly. A little humility goes far. Wouldn't you say a hush fell?" The woman in the red scarf shivered. Her husband shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. All eyes remained forward, unwilling to break the tense civility. At the rear, Claire handed Maya a bottle of water. "Please wait here," she said softly. "This will only take a moment." Maya sat in seat 6F, a premium perch, yet pale compared to the throne of 1A. She sipped the water and looked out, unreadable. Behind her, Rachel and Claire exchanged hushed words over the manifest. The overhead light flickered, and a ding signaled a service request from forward. But neither moved. Claire muttered, "No VIP status listed here, yet the pass is genuine." Rachel studied the printout, brow furrowed, possibly an internal override. She conceded, The name Brooks rings a bell, but let's resolve this here, quietly. Silence enveloped the galley as the two women weighed consequences, fairness versus fear of Vivian's next call. For Maya, each heartbeat echoed the unspoken verdict. Her mere presence disrupted the status quo. Back in 1A, Vivian leafed through a magazine, feigning nonchalance. An older man in 3B polished his glasses as Maya passed, then returned to his crossword, a mild irritation, but not worth comment. The cabin exhaled in relief that the theater remained private. Maya sat straight, never slumping. Her survival hinged on quiet strength. She recalled her father's counsel: silence can be survival, presence can be protest. And so she remained, a silent testament to dignity under pressure. Minutes later, Claire returned, footsteps soft against the carpet. She paused by Maya's side. "Your seat assignment is confirmed, Miss Brooks. You may return to 1A. A stunned hush washed through the cabin. Even the engine's hum seemed to quiet. Maya nodded once, rose with composed dignity, and gathered her bag. Each step toward the front felt lit by the collective gaze of first-class passengers, some curious, some uneasy, all newly alert. As she passed Rachel's poised form at the galley, Rachel offered a respectful nod. Vivian's magazine fell silent in her hands as Maya approached. No words were exchanged. Maya's calm gaze said all that needed saying. Reclaiming her seat was more than personal vindication. It rippled through the cabin like a silent verdict. Belonging is not a gift, but a right asserted through poise and principle. When Maya settled back into 1A, the cabin fell into a charged stillness. The flight had only just begun, but by the time takeoff thrust them skyward, the invisible imbalance had been challenged one quiet step at a time. The cabin's hush felt taut as a drawn bowstring when Captain Michael Carter's voice echoed through the PA, "Miss Maya Brooks. Please join me at the front of the aircraft. Flight staff, allow her immediate access to the cockpit." Heads turned, startled. Even Vivian Davenport paused mid-sip, her expression flickering between disbelief and fury. Maya Brooks remained still, absorbing the ripple of gasps as she rose steady, deliberate. She tucked her novel into her bag and walked the aisle, each step measured, drawing the eyes of every passenger, some in shock, others in dawning curiosity. At the cockpit door, the first officer gave a respectful nod, stepping aside to admit her inside. Captain Michael Carter stood, framed by controls and gauges, his uniform crisp and authoritative. His silver-streaked hair spoke of years of command. He regarded Maya with quiet intensity. "Miss Brooks," he began, "this seating discrepancy should never have occurred. Involvement of cockpit personnel is rare, but your father's designation demands protocol." He gestured toward a sleek black card in Maya's hand, the executive-level clearance her father had insisted she carry. Maya presented it. Carter examined the embossed letters. Maya Brooks. Executive Level 1, Clearance NovaAir Co-Founder. Succession. Recognition dawned in his eyes. "My father reserved this seat under executive authority," Maya explained evenly. "He asked that I carry proof in case any questions arose." Captain Carter's posture shifted from cordial to solemn respect. He tapped the comm panel. "This is Captain Carter. Effective immediately, no further inquiries or delays regarding Miss Brooks's seating. Return her to 1A and extend full executive priority." A crisp reply came from the flight attendant channel, acknowledged and executing now. "Sir." Maya closed her eyes briefly, feeling a current of vindication pulse through the cabin beyond the cockpit door. Carter turned back to her. "I apologize for the mistreatment you endured. Would you like me to accompany you back to your seat?" Maya met his gaze, calm and assured. "No, Captain. I'd prefer they feel the difference when I return alone. He offered a small, approving smile. Understood. He stepped aside as the cockpit door swung open, emerging into first class. Maya walked past rows of passengers whose faces had shifted from smug indifference to stunned silence. Claire Foster hovered in the aisle near Vivienne Davenport, eyes wide. As Maya passed, she bowed her head, the weight of the captain's order settling on her shoulders. At 1A, Vivienne Davenport hovered like a wounded monarch. Maya paused, her presence commanding attention without a word. Vivienne's magazine slipped from her lap as she realized her throne was being reclaimed. Without breaking stride, Maya slid into seat 1A. A hush deeper than before descended, one born not of complicity, but of reverence. Around her, passengers exchanged furtive glances. The older gentleman in 3B stared open-mouthed. The couple across the aisle shifted uncomfortably. Even the child with braids watched with wide eyes. Claire stepped forward, voice trembling with contrition. "Miss Brooks, your seat has been restored. We apologize for the confusion." Vivian's lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes darted to the captain's overhead panel, where Maya's call button glowed lit. Rachel Bennett emerged from the galley, clipboard in hand, face pale with realization. She approached with measured steps. "Miss Brooks," Rachel said, voice shaking. "I," her words caught as the cabin's intercom crackled again. "Attention all cabin crew," came Robert Grant's voice, the senior NovaAir liaison over the PA, effective immediately. Claire Foster is suspended pending investigation for misconduct. Flight Supervisor Rachel Bennett will undergo ethics review upon landing. A murmur of astonishment swelled. Claire Foster's cheeks drained of color as she removed her name badge and earpiece, her polished facade collapsing. Rachel Bennett froze, clipboard sliding from her fingers. Eyes turned to Vivienne Davenport, whose own name echoed next. "Mrs. Vivienne Davenport, you are issued a no-fly order across NovaAir flights effective immediately for passenger misconduct and abuse of a minor." Vivienne's body stiffened, her triumphant mask cracking into shock and humiliation. The cabin's earlier tension gave way to a charged stillness, an electric reckoning of power inverted. From row 3, the woman in the red scarf rose, tears in her eyes. "I should have spoken up," she admitted. "You showed more courage than all of us." She placed a gentle hand on Maya's armrest. One by one, passengers murmured apologies, confessions of guilt, gratitude for Maya's silent defiance. A young businessman declared, "We all failed you. Thank you for your dignity." Maya sat unmoved, letting the moment unfold. Her poise needed no words. As the cabin buzzed with newfound solidarity, Captain Carter's voice returned calm. "Resolute Standard Service may resume. Flight is now under executive protocol. Enjoy the rest of your journey." Maya leaned back, her gaze soft yet resolute, knowing that her silent presence had reshaped not just seats or airs, but the very ethos of everyone aboard. In that moment, belonging was no longer a privilege. Granted, it was a truth claimed. The intercom crackled to life once more. Captain Michael Carter's firm yet gentle voice resonating through every cabin speaker, "Miss Maya Brooks, please join me at the front of the aircraft. Flight staff, allow her immediate access to the cockpit." A collective intake of breath swept the cabin. The woman in the red scarf set down her magazine, eyebrows lifting in surprise. Vivienne Davenport stiffened, her posture betraying confusion as she leaned forward, anger flickering behind her composed mask. Maya rose again, calm, deliberate, her dark eyes sweeping the rows as she tucked her novel into her bag. She walked past Claire Foster near the galley, past passengers frozen in mid-conversation, until she reached the cockpit door. A first officer offered a respectful nod, sliding the door open. inside. Captain Michael Carter stood awaiting her. His uniform was immaculate, the NovaAir eagle pin glinting on his chest. His gaze held no hint of condescension, only the steady curiosity of someone overseeing a protocol of the highest order. "Miss Brooks," he began, closing the door behind them. "We rarely involve cockpit personnel in seating disputes unless a top-level clearance is required." Maya met his gaze without hesitation. From her blazer's inner pocket, she withdrew a slim, matte black card edged in platinum. She handed it to him. He turned it in his hand, reading the embossed text aloud. Maya Brooks, co-founder, Succession Executive Level 1, clearance recognition dawned in his eyes like dawn breaking through clouds. "Your father?" he asked softly. Maya nodded. "He reserved C-1A under executive authority. He asked me to carry this card as immediate proof of clearance." The captain's expression shifted to solemn respect. Without a word, he tapped the priority override channel. "This is Captain Carter. Effective immediately. No further inquiries or interference are to be made with Miss Brooks. She is to be returned to Seat 1A and treated with full executive priority. Confirm acknowledgement." Silence reigned for a heartbeat. Then the first officer's voice crackled back, crisp and obedient. "Acknowledged, sir." "Transmitting to cabin crew now." Maya's chest tightened, not with triumph, but with a deep sense of restoration. Captain Carter turned to her. "I apologize. Miss Brooks, you should never have been asked to move or questioned. This will be corrected at once." She inclined her head politely. "Thank you, Captain. I'd like the cabin to feel the difference when I return alone." A small, approving smile curved his lips. "Understood." He opened the door. As Maya stepped back into first class, the hush that greeted her was electric, no longer silent complicity, but a tense stillness charged with anticipation. Heads turned, phones were stowed, even the engine's hum seemed to pause. At 1A, Vivian Davenport sat rigid, her face a mask of disbelief. Claire Foster hovered nearby, radio handset forgotten in her hand, eyes wide with dawning shame. Rachel Bennett appeared from the galley, clutching her clipboard so tightly that her knuckles shone white. Without a word, Maya slid into her rightful seat. The call button above her head glowed triumphantly, no longer ignored. Claire fell to one knee, voice wavering. "Miss Brooks, your seat has been restored. I apologize for the confusion." Vivian's lips parted as if to protest, but no sound came. Her triumphant posture sagged as the cabin around them shifted in real time. Moments later, the senior liaison's voice, Robert Grant, interrupted, "Attention all cabin crew, effective immediately. Claire Foster suspended pending investigation for misconduct. Flight Supervisor Rachel Bennett will undergo an ethics review upon landing." Gasps echoed. Claire's uniform slipped from her shoulders as she removed her name badge. The weight of her actions laid bare. Rachel Bennett's clipboard dropped to the aisle carpet with a soft thud. Her face drained of color. All eyes turned to Vivian. The PA clicked again. "Mrs. Vivian Davenport, you are issued a no-fly order on NovaAir until further review for inappropriate conduct toward a minor. This will be documented with civil aviation authorities." Vivian's body froze, her initial anger melting into stunned humiliation. She slid back into her seat, staring at Maya with a mixture of envy, shame, and disbelief. From row 3, the woman in the red scarf rose, tears glistening. I should have spoken up," she admitted, voice cracking. "You had more courage than all of us." She placed a gentle hand on Maya's empty armrest. One by one, fellow passengers spoke. "I'm sorry I looked away. We all failed to protect you. Thank you for your dignity." Maya remained silent, letting their words wash over her. Her quiet presence spoke louder than any speech. Captain Carter's voice returned. "Standard service may resume. This flight is under executive protocol. Enjoy your journey." Around her, the cabin exhaled in collective relief and newfound respect. Maya Brooks leaned back, serene in her seat, the balance of power not merely restored, but redefined by her poise and unyielding dignity. A tense hush had settled over first class like a held breath. Rachel Bennett clutched her clipboard to her chest, the paper trembling against her palm. She managed to clear her throat once, twice, before finding the words, "I want to state for the record that our actions were strictly based on seating protocol," she exclaimed, voice cracking under the weight of so many witnesses. "If anyone questions our integrity, please understand there was no personal bias, only procedure." Her plea faded into the charged silence. From 2A, Vivian Davenport scoffed, twisting sharply in her seat to face Maya. "So, let me get this straight," she spat, voice louder than any passenger would have dared earlier. "You kick her out of her seat, and the moment someone learns her father is co-founder, she becomes royalty. Pull out a last name, and suddenly everyone bows. Classic entitlement." A ripple of discomfort immediately followed. No one spoke, but every eye flickered toward Maya, some with sympathy, some with shame. Maya remained still, gaze forward, her expression quiet and unreadable. Then, as if summoned by the mounting tension, Captain Michael Carter reappeared at the cockpit door. His uniform was immaculate. His presence carried an unmistakable authority. He walked down the aisle with measured purpose, stopping just behind Maya's seat. "With all due respect, Mr. Grant," he began, directing his words to Robert Grant's open-channel speaker, "there appears to be confusion regarding Miss Brooks's credentials." Vivian's lips tightened, but Captain Carter continued. "Miss Maya Brooks is not merely the daughter of a co-founder. She is the legal co-beneficiary of the Brooks Aviation Trust, which holds a controlling stake in this airline. She carries executive level 1 clearance by board resolution last quarter. Her status here is not accidental. It is codified and protected." The cabin exhaled as one. Passengers glanced at one another, mouths agape. A woman in row 3 dropped her magazine in disbelief. Claire Foster shrank back, her once proud posture collapsing under the captain's words. Rachel Bennett paled, clipboard slipping from her grasp. Vivian's defiance faltered into stunned silence. She looked around as though the cabin itself had betrayed her. Captain Carter turned slightly to Maya, offering a subtle nod that acknowledged her composure. "Maya Brooks has done nothing to justify the treatment she received," he asserted calmly. "Her seat was properly assigned, and her presence here is protected." The hush that followed was unlike any before. It was a silence of reckoning passengers absorbing a truth they'd willfully ignored. Whispers died on hesitant lips. No one dared speak. Finally, Vivian murmured, "A teenager, a child." "She can't," her words trailed off as Captain Carter cut in softly. "Age does not diminish ownership rights," he said. Her legal status was certified to avoid precisely this kind of disruption. "I trust that clears the matter." A breathless pause followed. Then Robert Grant's voice returned over the intercom. "Neutral, but firm, effective immediately. Claire Foster is suspended pending full investigation for misconduct and abuse of authority. Flight Supervisor Rachel Bennett will undergo internal ethics review upon landing." Gasps erupted. Claire Foster removed her name badge and earpiece with hands that shook. Rachel Bennett froze, tears glistening in her eyes as she realized her career hung in the balance. All eyes now turned to Vivian. The final intercom chime came, "Mrs. Vivian Davenport." You are issued a no-fly order across NovaAir flights until further notice for passenger misconduct involving a minor. This decision is documented and will be forwarded to the civil aviation authorities." Vivian's face drained of color. She sat rigidly in 2A. Her earlier triumph evaporated into humiliation. A few rows back, the woman in the red scarf rose, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I should have spoken up," she confessed, voice trembling. "You showed more courage than all of us." Passengers began to murmur their regrets, apologies whispered like prayers. A young businessman leaned forward. "I'm sorry I stayed silent," he said. "Thank you for your strength." Maya remained motionless in 1A, accepting each apology with a dignified nod. The cabin no longer felt like a lounge. It was a chamber of collective conscience. Captain Carter's voice, resumed over the PA standard service, may now resume under executive protocol. "Thank you for your patience." As the crew returned to their duties, Maya closed her eyes briefly, letting the moment wash over her. The engines hummed once more, but the real turbulence had settled in hearts, minds, and unspoken promises. Her presence had reclaimed more than a seat. It had unmasked hypocrisy and demanded accountability. In that silent aftermath, the first-class cabin had seen the power of dignity, carried not by privilege, but by quiet conviction. The cabin remained in stunned silence long after Robert Grant's final announcement had echoed through the intercom. Claire Foster's breath caught. She removed her name badge and earpiece with trembling hands before slipping toward the rear jump seat. Her once proud uniform now looked like a costume stripped of its purpose. Beside her, Rachel Bennett's clipboard clattered to the floor, a quiet punctuation to the collapse of her composed neutrality. No one spoke as the sleek figure of NovaAir's onboard security liaison paced down the aisle. Clad in a tailored navy suit, she paused beside Vivian Davenport's seat. Her voice was low but firm. "Mrs. Davenport, pursuant to NovaAir's passenger conduct code, you are hereby issued an immediate no-fly order on all NovaAir-operated flights effective until further review. Your verbal abuse and misuse of loyalty status to target a minor violate multiple behavioral clauses. All documentation will be forwarded to civil aviation authorities upon landing." A shiver ran through Vivian as her signature confidence fractured into something resembling fear. She remained motionless, frozen in her seat, her triumphant airs finally drained. A soft murmur rose in the cabin behind her, carrying no mockery but something far weightier, collective reckoning. In row 3, the woman with the red scarf rose to her feet, voice quavering. "I should have said something," she confessed, tears pooling in her eyes. "I watched it unfold and stayed silent." "You stood your ground with more grace than anyone I've ever seen, and you did it all alone." Maya Brooks met her gaze with gentle warmth. The woman bent forward, pressing a hand to the empty armrest beside Maya's seat. "Thank you for being braver than the rest of us." Around them, passengers spoke softly, voices trembling with contrition. "We all failed you. I'm sorry I didn't intervene. Your dignity reminded us what decency looks like." Even a young boy in the back leaned forward, eyes wide, whispering to his mother, "She's really strong." The mother nodded, tears glistening on her cheeks. "Yes, sweetheart, she really is." At the front, Claire Foster sat rigid, her earlier complicity now etched into her posture. Rachel Bennett remained motionless, a hollow stare betraying her realization. She would be remembered not for years of service, but for this one moment. Behind them, Vivian Davenport turned slowly, her face a portrait of envy laced with shame. She locked eyes with Maya, but hers was not the contempt it once had been. Now it was the raw admission of having underestimated the quiet power of a single girl refusing to yield. The engines hummed as Flight A23 cruised gently, The cabin lights brightened, signaling that standard service would resume under executive protocol. At the galley, Captain Michael Carter's voice replaced tension with calm authority. Crew, return to normal operations. We're slightly delayed on meal service. Let's proceed. Months later, the story of the Maya Brooks flight circulated quietly within NovaAir's corridors. No press release was ever issued. Internal discretion, and the Brooks family's influence kept the incident out of mass headlines, but its impact was undeniable. Mandatory ethics training rolled out. Policy memos underscored zero tolerance for discrimination. Leadership seminars used anonymous reenactments to drive home the lesson. In NovaAir's flagship training academy, nested within the airline's main operational hub, Claire Foster now stood before a room of fresh recruits. Their crisp new uniforms and nervous anticipation reflected the academy's highest ideals: service, respect, integrity. Claire's stance was different from the clipped formality of her past. She spoke plainly, her eyes meeting each recruit's with unvarnished honesty. "I made a mistake once," she began, voice steady but earnest. "I believed cabin hierarchy outweighed human dignity. I enforced protocol without conscience. I forgot that policies are only as noble as the people who uphold them." Behind her, a large screen displayed a simple image, a crew member offering a drink to a lone child in first class. The caption read, "Dignity is not determined by status. It's revealed through service." She continued, "When no one's watching, how will you act? Will you question when it's easier to comply, or will you choose humanity over hierarchy?" A hand rose tentatively in the back. Claire nodded at a young woman in a pristine uniform. "Yes." The recruit's voice was soft but clear. "Miss Foster, how do you know when it's your place to speak up versus following orders?" Claire paused. The room quiet. She leaned forward, resting both hands on the podium. "That is the most important question you can ask," she said, "because there will be times when what you're told conflicts with who you are." In those moments, remember Maya Brooks, a 14-year-old girl who didn't speak loudly, but whose silent resolve spoke louder than any announcement. Your duty is not just to follow orders, but to uphold the values that give your orders meaning. She let her words settle. Behind her, recruits exchanged thoughtful glances, young men and women who had never witnessed such a paradigm shift. In that silent exchange, Claire Foster saw hope, a new generation of flight attendants prepared not only to navigate turbulence, but to steward human dignity at every altitude. Outside the academy, Vivian Davenport had quietly re-emerged, this time as a volunteer at NovaAir's terminal assistance desk. No couture pearls, no entitlement. She guided elderly passengers, handed out wheelchairs, and offered directions with genuine empathy. When asked why, she simply replied, "I learned that grace isn't inherited, it's practiced." As new flights boarded and cabin lights gleamed, the legacy of that one turbulent journey remained alive, not in headlines, but in every act of kindness, every courageous silence, and every service with honor. In NovaAir's cabins and beyond, Maya Brooks's example had become a silent compass, pointing all who followed toward a sky defined not by privilege, but by the dignity we afford one another. Claire Foster stood before the final ethics module in NovaAir's training academy, her uniform crisp, but her posture transformed. The room was hushed as fresh recruits watched her every move. She held up a stack of blank index cards. "Write down a moment when someone treated you as less than you deserved," she instructed, voice steady. "Then, note what you wish they had done differently. Because one day, you may face someone who doesn't look like you expect, and your job isn't to question their place, but to serve with honor, especially when no one's watching." A tentative hand rose in the back. Is there a right way to handle difficult passengers? Claire offered a small, genuine smile one earned through her own reckoning. First, ask yourself, is the passenger difficult or just unprotected? She clicked to the final slide, a silhouette of a young girl at a window. Reflection soft in the glass. No name, no label, just presence. Halfway across Sky City Airport's domestic wing, Vivian Davenport knelt beside a cart of mobility aids and welcome pamphlets. Gone were the couture gowns and pearls. She wore a simple volunteer vest and a warm smile. A disoriented elderly traveler approached, and Vivian Hare in a neat bun offered her hand. "Good morning, I'm Vivian. Can I help you find your gate?" Her tone held no trace of the haughty yesterday, only genuine warmth. When a woman in a wheelchair gestured toward the vending machine, Vivian jogged to grab a bottle of water, each movement purposeful, as if each gesture were a quiet promise to live the lesson she'd learned. When asked why she volunteered, Vivian always replied the same: "I lost my way once, and someone younger than me showed me what grace looks like. I figure the least I can do is carry it forward." Junior flight attendants at a nearby cafe whispered, "Is that her, the one from the training story?" Vivian simply nodded and returned to her post, her new legacy written one kind act at a time. Back in the academy, Maya Brooks' name lingered as more than history. In cabin briefings and ethical workshops, her presence was the silent standard all strive to honor. Claire concluded the session softly. "When you enforce policy," remember, Maya, she never shouted, yet her steadfast dignity spoke louder than any announcement. Outside the window, flights continued to arrive and depart. The world moved on, but in NovaAir's quiet corners, check-in counters, crew briefings, volunteer halls, Maya Brooks' example lived on, not as a whisper of status, but as a beacon of integrity. Those who once failed her chose to live better, not from guilt, but from gratitude for the lesson she embodied, that true belonging is claimed not by pedigree or privilege, but by the unwavering courage to remain seated in one's rightful place. As the cabin doors finally close on Maya Brooks's journey, we leave with more than a restored seat. We carry a reminder that dignity demands no announcement. From hushed threats to executive overrides, Maya's silent strength reshaped the skies and exposed the cracks in systems built on complicity. Claire Foster and Rachel Bennett emerged transformed, training a new generation on the power of empathy over protocol. Even Vivian Davenport found redemption in small acts of service, proving that grace isn't inherited, it's practiced. So when you think no one is watching, remember every choice to stand up or stay silent writes the next chapter of our shared story. Did you feel your heart tighten when Maya refused to move? Did you cheer when justice unfolded without a shout? Let us know in the comments which moment moved you most. If this journey stirred your soul, tap that like button, share with friends who need to witness this courage, and subscribe for more stories that uplift, challenge, and remind us all true power flies highest when wielded with integrity.